In the early 2000s, Nokia and BlackBerry were going head to head to see who was going to take over the world of smartphones. And then in 2007, everything changed with the iPhone, and suddenly Nokia and BlackBerry were irrelevant. What does that have to tell us about the automotive industry in 2022? Actually, quite a lot. Let's take a look. And for those of you interested in investing, check out Weebull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. First thing I'm going to do is go back even further than the 2000s and talking about the phone wars. I'm actually going to talk about the auto industry in the 1970s when I was a very small child. At that point, it was basically Detroit / the United States. And then if you wanted either like really common person type of vehicles, it would be Volkswagen, or it would be BMW and Mercedes if you wanted a high-end German vehicle. So that was kind of the state of the world. And then of course you had Japan enter the fray and really disrupt things a whole bunch in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and into the 1980s. And so things really changed. But basically, since the 1980s, there's been a bit of a triumvirate. The world centers of automotive power since the 1980s have pretty much been based in Detroit / the United States, Germany, and Japan. Obviously, that's the kind of places you think about when you think about automobiles. But as I was recently reading about the VinFast North Carolina deal to put a new VinFast automotive and battery plant into Chatham County, North Carolina, it suddenly hit me like a ton of bricks that the triumvirate that's been controlling the world for the past 40+ years is going to become irrelevant very, very rapidly. So first of all, details on the VinFast deal. If you don't know that, VinFast is an automotive producer based out of Singapore. It's actually owned by Vingroup, which is a Vietnamese company, and I'm not going to try to tell you the founder's name. I'll post it below. I'm sorry, I would totally butcher his name. But anyway, it's very interesting. Vingroup itself has been around since I think 1993, so closing in on 30 years. But VinFast, the automotive group, has only been around for 5 years. It started up in 2017. So this is pretty remarkable because they're not only building a factory in the United States for both automobiles and batteries, because of course it's going to be BEVs that they produce there, but they're also opening showrooms in the United States to begin selling their cars directly to US consumers. And of course, as we've all heard over and over again from me and from Sandy Monroe and from lots of other people, there are many Chinese companies competing in the BEV space like BYD, NIO, X-Peng, etc., etc. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of new players in new geographies that haven't been competitive before, and that was what really got me thinking about all of this stuff. So let's turn back to that phone example that I was using at the beginning. In the early 2000s, 2000 to 2007, 2008, in that range, we had BlackBerry and Nokia really duking it out, and then there was Palm Pilot that was also trying to compete. And at the time, what you had was you had very, very small screens in smartphones, and then you had the famous chiclet keyboard keys, right? So the physical keys that you would press. And everybody was like, who's going to take over? Is it going to be BlackBerry? Is it going to be Nokia? Nokia was winning at the time. So there was all of this competition, and the relevance was, which one of these companies with Palm Pilot sort of, following in third place. But the basic question was, who is going to win this battle? But then the iPhone came out in 2007, and in 2008, Android kind of changed over into the same form factor as the iPhone, and you had the kind of block tablet thing that is very much the paradigm nowadays. And suddenly, within just a year or two, BlackBerry, Nokia, Palm Pilot, etc. just fell off the cliff. They were no longer relevant. And the obvious comparison that I'm seeing here is that Detroit / Germany / Japan are in that same situation. They've been duking it out for who's number one in producing ICE vehicles or internal combustion engine vehicles. They've been duking it out for years and years and decades to see who is going to be number one, who's going to be the best in the luxury markets versus the mass markets versus the truck markets and all of that stuff. And all of a sudden, what I'm seeing right now going on with these Chinese players, with Tesla and with VinFast out of Vietnam, is that they are becoming irrelevant. Instead of the leaders, they're very quickly becoming the also-rans. And of course, as we all know, BlackBerry and Nokia, etc. kind of limped along for years, and I think they actually still produce phones to some extent. Actually, BlackBerry is now producing some security software for the Volkswagen Cariad software stack, which is a really weird sort of irony that you've got this also-ran mobile platform that's producing the security stack for this supposedly brand new, very forward-thinking software that that Volkswagen is building. So I don't think that says anything fantastic about Volkswagen, because I think that they should be building their own security stack. But anyway, regardless of that, you had these centers of power and everybody was like, ooh, who's gonna win? But as soon as the paradigm shifted, nobody cared about that anymore. They just weren't relevant. They not only weren't selling all that much, nobody really even cared about them. And yeah, there were a couple of years between 2007 and 2010 or so where people would argue that their BlackBerry was still better, but it was a very quickly losing argument. And what I'm seeing right now is that people saying that ICE vehicles are better, it's a very quickly losing argument. And more importantly, what we're seeing is that old adage that disruption comes from the outside. What we've got is Tesla and Chinese companies and the Singaporean company VinFast, and what they're doing is they're just leapfrogging over the ICE vehicle manufacturers. They're not saying we're going to compete with these people, they're saying we're going to make these companies irrelevant. We're going to make GM and Ford and Volkswagen and Toyota and Nissan, etc., etc. We're going to make them irrelevant in the coming world. And you can see the legacy auto manufacturers scrambling to try to catch up and to try to change their ways. But again, what we saw from BlackBerry and from Nokia is that they did produce these sort of tablet-style phones and everything following the iPhone and Android paradigm, but nobody really cared about them anymore. They were just also-rans, and they were not that important, and they were not at the cutting edge anymore, and so nobody cared. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to say, oh, but wait, that was a whole different thing. That was this new technology that was coming around from the 1980s into the 90s, into the early 2000s, and everything was disrupting itself. But the automobile industry has been in place for well over 100 years, and is very solidly established. And my retort to that is that that means they're even riper for disruption. If you've got an industry that's been in place for too long and is too comfortable at doing the same thing and competing on what they think is the football field of competition, and then suddenly people come in and say, that's not even the field we're playing on, we're actually playing on this field over here, they're not designed to pivot like that. They're designed for profit and stability. That's what they're good at, right? They keep making the same thing over and over again and eking more and more profit out of it and making really small incremental changes. And that's what's happened, right? If you see vehicles from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, they're more or less the same thing. They've just got more bells and whistles, but basically the engine, it's a little bit cleaner, it's not so dirty anymore, but it's all these little tiny incremental changes, and they're just not positioned properly to make an incredible leap from ICE engines to battery electric vehicles with batteries and the drivetrains and all of that kind of stuff. And you can see them all scrambling rapidly. So basically what I'm saying here is that for the next few years, there's going to be an argument about whether Volkswagen or GM or Toyota or whoever is the leader and the most important, but already they're fighting over something that doesn't even matter anymore. And none of them are going to be the king of the hill in the new world because they're on the wrong field. They're playing the wrong game at this point. And that should scare the hell out of the Japanese, and it should scare the hell out of the Germans. And honestly, it would scare the hell out of me in the United States if it weren't for Tesla. If it weren't for Tesla leading the way for everybody, but especially in the United States as a US company, I would be really worried about it, because I would say we're going to become irrelevant as a country for manufacturing vehicles in the future when they go to BEV and they have a lot of autonomy and electronics and all of that kind of stuff. We'll be irrelevant. And so thank goodness that Tesla is here and leading the way and holding up the United States, because I really think it's going to become Tesla and the Chinese, and you know, with some good luck, VinFast is going to do well. And also I think that South Korea in the form of Hyundai and Kia, etc., are actually doing pretty decently at this point as well. So they could become another big player in this whole thing. But what you can see is these scrappy young companies, including Tesla, are just going, look, we're just going to leapfrog the whole thing. We're not going to compete with what you guys are doing. We're going to invent a whole new thing, and we're going to compete in that arena. And suddenly all these other players that were competing on this one type of game and scrapping it out for who was going to be the victor and who was going to do the best incremental changes and get the biggest market share and all of that stuff, it doesn't matter anymore, folks. So to a large extent, Detroit and Germany and Japan are just kind of irrelevant to the future car market. And you can argue with me about this, but let's wait about 4 or 5 years from now, so like 2026 or 2027, and then come back and look at this video again and see if I'm not right. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it fun and thought-provoking. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your support. I truly appreciate it. I've done a lot of long interviews recently with people, and it really helps to have the support of my Patreon patrons to help with questions, to help clarify things, and just to sort of keep things on track. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you all so much. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have Tesla Bot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, success is a possible outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out Weebull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.